DC, don't change a thing. Everybody's angry about something about it. Well, if you are, why the hell would you send the same people back? Why would you send Trump or Biden back? You're going to get the same result, which is anger and division and no results. So it's a really important question, and one that I think I'm uniquely prepared to take on, because if I dealt with the president of the Iron Workers Union in New Jersey, I'm ready for Chuck Schumer. I'll be ready for him. Yes, sir, in the back. He's coming over to you, just so, because the cameras want to hear you too.
So kind of along the same line, this is going to be a question you probably don't want to hear, but
Okay.
I hosted you at my business 8 years ago here in New Hampshire. You and Mary Pat worked as hard as John McCain, as Bill Clinton. You worked the state as hard as anybody's ever worked, and it didn't work out.
Yep.
My concern, and I think a lot of concerns in here, because I don't see a lot of red hats, is he's going to win the nomination. Sleepy Joe's going to win the other nomination. Is that really what we're left with? Would you be willing, if it's you, your buddy Larry Hogan, Joe Manchin, Bobby Kennedy, whoever it might be, third party, would you be willing to do it?
No. No, and here's why. Here's why.
Governor, honestly, so you would say you would pick Donald Trump or Joe Biden over third party?
No, I'm just saying I don't want to be the third party candidate.
Okay, but would you support somebody that was a legitimate candidate to go against those two?
It depended on who it was, but my point to you is that I don't think there's anybody. And listen, I love Larry Hogan. Larry was a great governor of Maryland, and I supported him in 2014 as chairman of the Governors Association when no one thought he could win. And I went down there and we spent a couple $1 million in the last 10 days on Larry Hogan to get him over the finish line. And he was a great governor. And Joe Manchin, on the other side of the aisle, was my mentor governor when I became governor in 2009. The NGA, the National Governors Association, would assign you a mentor, usually from the other party. And mine was Joe Manchin. He was the governor of West Virginia at the time. And so I love Joe. I think he's a great guy. But I don't think an independent can win. And the reason I don't think an independent wins is because they never have. And Ross Perot, who spent more money than anyone ever has, remember Ross Perot ran 30-minute TV commercials. Remember those? 30 minutes he would buy in the network and like talk about the deficit. He was talking about it back then. He ran as aggressive an independent campaign as anybody has ever run in this country. He didn't win one state. He got 19% nationally. The only independent candidate since the 1900s, since Teddy Roosevelt, who has won any states was George Wallace. And he won the South because he said segregation now, segregation forever. I don't think we want to go back to that, right? So I think it's a fool's errand. I don't think we can win. And this is what I say to the No Labels folks. They're created to defeat Donald Trump. Let's not put any kind of, flowers on it. They have started to defeat Donald Trump. I say to them all the time, be careful, because you're not shooting with a rifle in politics, you're shooting with a shotgun, and you don't know who you're going to hit. And you might just wind up electing Donald Trump. And that's not what they want. So I don't think the country is ready for nor wants a third party, and I wouldn't do it because I want to be president. And if I lose in the primary, I lose. And what I learned 8 years ago was you go home and you feel lousy for a while, but the sun comes up in the morning and you find other ways to try to contribute to your country. But I'm not going to go out there, because let me tell you what it would look like also if I did it. It would look like I was just being a spoiled sport, a bad loser, that I competed in this primary, didn't win, and then said, well, the hell with it. I'm going to run as a Republican and bring my entire party down with me. It's not who I am, and it's not the way I'm built. It is not that I am happy with those choices, and that's why I'm here, to make sure that that isn't our choice. But
Do me a favor?
Yeah, damn right. And I didn't mind that question at all.
On the considering the last two questions and on the question of how do you win, have you considered reaching out to Democrats and asking for their help in defeating Donald Trump? Specifically, have you considered asking them to temporarily change their party affiliation and vote in the Republican primary?
It's really interesting that you asked that question, because what I've found really just like in the last 3 weeks that I've been up here is that there have been a lot of Democrats who I was thinking that was a reaction to my answer. Sorry, there is nothing to report. Oh, okay. No, I've had a number of Democrats who have come to some of these events or met me when I was, campaigning in downtowns and places, and have come to me and said that they're doing that because they're so concerned about having a choice just between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. It's not just Donald Trump. These are Democrats who are concerned with the choice they're going to have too. And so I think there's that dynamic going on. I am uncomfortable with the idea of asking people to change their party, because I think that's something that's very personal for them to decide. But in the end, whoever is eligible to vote on what I think is going to be January 23rd, but they still haven't set the firm date, but that's the way it looks. Whoever's eligible to vote on that day and wants to vote should go out and vote for the person that they think will make a difference.
I think there are strong reasons for Democrats to vote in the Republican primary. They share the concerns of President Biden, his age, his declining capabilities, and it's risky to count on President Biden to be able to defeat Donald Trump, and it's a big concern for them.
Sure.
It's a better strategy for them would be to basically do the political equivalent of a full court press and take him on in the Republican primary.
Well, look, I would say this, as a general political principle: win as soon as you can and as often as you can. And in this instance, that's why I'm saying New Hampshire is so important. And in my view, even more important than Iowa is this time, because Iowa's a caucus and it's a closed system. This is an open system. And I had David Cameron, the former Prime Minister of Great Britain, back when I was running in 2015. He said to me, "Explain this system of yours to me." He said, "We have this civilized system in Great Britain. Their election is 48 days long. You can't campaign before, you can't campaign after. It's 48 days. He said, "You people do this for 2 years, and then you wind up with who you wind up with." I'm like, yeah, our system is the one that says you don't always get to vote for who you want to vote for, you get to vote for who's left. And so I understand exactly what you mean.
This would change that dynamic.
Well, and that's right, and that's what New Hampshire can do. Look, if Donald Trump gets ahead of steam here, let me just tell you, if he wins here, he's winning the nomination. He wins here and there's not anybody who's even like a close second. Close second could help. But this is where it needs to be done, because this stuff happens quickly the way we do this now. He was a nobody from a political perspective 8 years ago. And after Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, it was over. Some people hung around. Kasich hung around for a little while. Cruz hang around for a little while. But it was over. So the urgency that your question implies is why I'm saying the things I'm saying as directly as I'm saying them. We have no time to mince words. We have no time to stand on ceremony. We have no time to mess around here. If you have concerns about Donald Trump being the nominee of this party or the President of the United States, then you need to do it now.
To that point, here in New Hampshire, people only have until October 6th to change their party affiliation.
I didn't know that.
They're going to vote in the Republican primary. It's now or never.
Yeah. Guess what? Today's what, the 19th?
Yep.
Right. So we got 17 days. See how quick I did that math in my head? That's pretty good. You, sir, right back here. Hold on, I'm going to calling him on him right now. I'll get back to you in a second.
Thank you, Governor. Thanks for coming to Northampton.
Happy to be back.
Yes, and I know Sweeney. We had a plant in Gloucester County.
All right, so you do know him.
Yep. One question, but three very related topics. Can you speak about education, parental rights, and biological males competing in women's sports?
Okay, so let's start backwards. Biological males should not compete in women's sports. That's why they're called women's sports. And as the father of two daughters, both of who played sports, we fought hard for Title IX in this country so that women could have equal access to be on the playing fields and compete and get all the great lessons that come from that competition. The winning, the losing, the striving, all the things that help you later in your life. I don't want that taken away from women, and it's unfair. Look, there are definable, provable, genetic differences between the physical capabilities of men and women. And if you don't believe me, listen to probably the greatest female tennis player of all time, Serena Williams, who said a few months ago, the 150th rated man in the men's tennis circuit could beat me in straight sets. And this is a woman who's won 23 Grand Slams as a tennis player on the women's side. It's just the way it is. Parental rights and education, I'll answer together. On the parental rights issue, I really believe that there's no one better situated to make difficult decisions about their children's future than their mother and father. And we have too many governors in this country right now who believe that they should be able to decide for parents. And this is particularly on the transgender issue. Now look, fortunately for me and Mary Pat, our children are now grown and age of majority, but when they were below the age of majority, we never had to deal with that issue. I don't know how I would have dealt with it. I really don't. It's got to be an extraordinarily difficult issue for a mother or father to deal with. But I'll tell you this, the mother and the father are better situated to give advice and make that decision than some governor sitting in the state capitol. I have no problem with parents making those decisions. I might not agree with the decision the parent makes, but it's their child. And when did we as Republicans decide that government was a better decider of what happened in a family than the mother and father? To me, that's what we used to accuse Democrats of. Now, all of a sudden, we got Ron DeSantis deciding these things. Who the hell is he to be deciding for any mother or father in the state of Florida what they do if their child comes to them and says, I have questions about my gender? The parents should make that call. And I think on that issue, I don't envy one of those parents for having to deal with that issue, but they're the ones that deal with it. Them and their physicians and their child, and not a government that gets in between a mother and father and their child. And look, they're not all perfect parents out there. We know that. So, because when I say this, someone says to me, well, some parents are wholly irresponsible. Well, guess what? We don't have a license to become a parent in this country. Some people become parents who are not going to be responsible parents. But we can't make laws for the exception. And I think for the most part in this country, parents love their children more than anybody else ever will. They care and understand about their children more than anybody else will. And they're in the best position when they are children to make those decisions for them, not the government. Now, in education, they're tied together because you look at the most recent statistics, and we should be alarmed as a country. 39% of eighth graders do not read at grade level. 39% of eighth graders don't read at grade level. 25% of eighth graders do not do math at grade level. And we spend $400 billion a year on K-12 education in this country. And those are the results we're getting. If you spent that kind of money in a business you ran and got those results, all of the people who were responsible for those results would be in grave trouble. Yet, because we have an educational system in this country that is dominated by the teachers union, they take the position that they will defend the worst of their members rather than improve education for the children they're supposed to serve. And this is not just rhetoric, everybody. When I was governor of New Jersey, the city of Newark, where we spent, by the way, $35,000 per pupil, $35,000 per pupil in the city of Newark in public money for K-12 education. They had, when I became governor, over 100 teachers in the Newark School District who never went into a classroom because the school district determined they were so bad that it would be injurious to have them in, but because of the union's influence, they couldn't fire them. So they put them in what they called, not me, they called it the rubber room. And they would send them there to watch TV, read newspapers, and read books, and paid them a full-time salary to do nothing because the union wouldn't permit them to fire them. And the union stood up for that and forced that result. We needed a revolution in education in this country, K-12. A revolution, which ties back to parents' rights. I think every parent, we take this $400 billion that we spend between local, state, and federal money, about $80 billion of it is federal, $320 billion is state and local money, and we should give that money to parents. And say to those parents, we're putting it into an educational account like you have it in a retirement account. And you then spend that money on your child's education, however you see fit. If you, listen, I went to public school. I got a great public school education at K-12 where I grew up in New Jersey. I couldn't have gotten a better one, I think, if I'd gone to a private school or a parochial school. I got a great education there. And if you have a great public school system and you want to send your kid there, good. Send your money to the public school and let them go there. The key should be the parents should be able to decide where their child will thrive, where they will do best. And the other thing it will do is create competition. There is no competition in the system anymore. What there is public schools and upper middle class to upper class people opting out. So for instance, Mary Pat and I went to public school. Mary Pat went to parochial school from K-12. That was her parents' choice back then. So when our children were ready for school, we had to choose between public school and parochial school. All four of our children went to parochial school. So you know who runs the show in the Christie household. I remember talking to her the year before Andrew, our oldest, was going to go. I said, "We're going to send them to Mendham schools?" She goes, No, we're sending them to Assumption School in Morristown. I'm like, "We are?" She goes, "Yes, they're going to parochial school." Went, okay, they're going to parochial school. And all of them went there. And listen, all of them did well, and they thrived. And one of the reasons they did was because we did agree that we wanted to send them to a place that was not only rigorous from an educational perspective, but also we're going to reinforce the values that we were trying to teach at home. And so we made the choice, but we had the option to make that choice. We pay our property taxes that support the schools and our state taxes that support the schools, and then we pay tuition on top of it because we can afford to. But there are tens of millions of families in this country who can't. And my question is, given all the money we're spending, why should they be consigned to having no choice? And why should those children be consigned to that? So that's what I think we should be doing in this country. And the president can do that with federal money, but also needs to use the bully pulpit. There are lots of states who are willing to do this if they get permission from the federal government to do it. We should grant that permission and encourage states to do it and give parents choice. And then if there's money left over in that account, then that money should go to the kids. Well, they would go. The Department of Education would go as part of this plan because the $80 billion that we spend is done through the Department of Education. So we don't need a federal Department of Education, and we don't need to pay for it. And I'd rather have that money go to parents than go to bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., or just create more forms for us all to fill out. So on those three issues, all of which are important issues, that's where I stand on them. And there's no ambiguity. It's what I believe. And there'll be some people who agree and some who disagree, but that's exactly the way I would act as president, is to act on those three things. And I would be very careful about Republicans in this race who say to you that they want to substitute their judgment for yours. Because maybe with that Republican, you might agree with their position on a particular issue. But if we establish that precedent, then when a Democrat gets in, they get to decide for you. And I don't think you're going to want to have that happen. And vice versa for Democrats. That's why I never understood the Democrat position on this. But now I'm seeing big government Republicans, and DeSantis is the big example of this. It's not only this, but Disney, right? Disney takes a position against a bill that he's for. You know what that's called in New Jersey? Everyday governing. I get an idea, lots of people come out against it. In Florida, that's not the case, though. In Florida, you're the emperor, apparently. And so a company that is the biggest employer in the state isn't allowed to express dissent in Florida. When they do, they get punished. He says, no, no, no. I never liked those tax breaks they got, and I didn't take them away for retaliatory purposes. I took them away because I didn't like them. Baloney. He was governor for 5 years at that point. He didn't know that the biggest employer in the state was getting tax breaks? Let me just tell you something. Having done it, you know everybody's getting tax breaks. You know all of them. And so he did it to retaliate. And when people say, well, I agree with him, that what Disney, the position Disney took was wrong. I'm like, okay, well, what if it was a liberal Democratic governor in Florida who proposed a really liberal bill? And then Disney came out against that. Would you want them punished? And they said, well, no, I wouldn't want to punish them. I'm like, aha. Like, we got to be consistent here. Beware of big government Republicans. They are no better than big government Democrats just because we agree with them. I want government out of our lives as much as possible. And you can't just say it's okay for them to be in our lives when I agree with them, but not okay when I don't. That kind of logic fails, and what it leads to is government being involved in everything, and that's not what I want. I'm going to go to you next.
My question is the border. I grew up in Houston, Texas, and outside of Houston, I saw on Fox News this morning that the cartels are building a city. It's about probably 20 to 30 miles outside of Houston, right outside the Woodlands. That's one question, because they're making it easy for illegals to buy property. And the other one is the coyotes busting through the ranchers' fences. One of our rancher friends just sent us a picture of a brand new electric fence being mowed down by the coyotes. What can you do about the border?
Look, on day one, the first executive order I would sign would be to send the National Guard to the border to partner with Customs and Border Patrol to stop the cartels. Because we had 110,000 Americans die last year of drug overdoses. 110,000 Americans died last year of drug overdoses. Drug overdoses are now the largest killer of men 18 to 34 in this country. Let's think about that. And there's a bunch of reasons for that, but reason one is we've got to get the border under control. We have to use the National Guard to do it. I am not someone who will send the United States Army there to invade Mexico. Sounds really cool, you know, but I don't think we want to be invading Mexico. There are lots of things we can do. We can use our intelligence agencies to be able to get intel on what's going on the other side of the border, and to make specific strikes against criminals in Mexico who are bringing these drugs and people over the border. But I don't think we should have some full, as Governor DeSantis has said, you know, full-scale invasion of Mexico. You know, he doesn't want to go to Ukraine, but he's happy to invade Mexico. Interesting things they learn in Tallahassee. Secondly, We need to fix the immigration system, and no one's been willing to do it. I think we need to go to a merit-based immigration system. What will you bring to the country? And if you have skills and abilities that we need, you go to the front of the line. Let's have a merit-based system. We have 6 million vacant jobs in this country right now. There's not an unemployment problem in this country right now. We have 6 million open jobs. We need people to fill those jobs. Now, those are jobs that Americans either can't do or don't want to do. Well, let's get a merit-based system to bring people in here to work and do those jobs. And maybe if there were competition for those jobs, then maybe some Americans would go, oh, I better take those jobs. But we need to have a merit-based system. We need to fix that system. And no one's been willing to do it. You know why? Because it's politically unpopular. Everyone says they want the immigration system fixed, but then everybody wants the immigration fixed only the way they want it. So Democrats want everybody to come across the border, and once they come across the border, they want to give them a driver's license and a voter card immediately. Right? Well, we're not going to agree to that. But we want a merit-based system and a very secure border, and they're unwilling to agree to that. So what are we going to do? We've got to find ways to bring and force change. Ronald Reagan did it 40 years ago. He forced change on immigration. And not every part of his bill I agreed with, but I wouldn't, because it was forcing change and forcing both sides to agree to something. And so we need to do that, because if we don't change the system, it's so dysfunctional. Why would anybody wait in line? Let's just fly to Mexico and go across the border. We're setting up incentives, and Joe Biden did this more than anybody by saying when he was running 3 years ago, we're going to open the border if I'm elected. Well, they were listening. And the other people that deserve some blame here in this are the mayors and the governors who said they were sanctuary cities and states. Well, they said that stuff when no one was coming over. So it was easy. You could play to the grandstand, right? Go, oh yeah, we're sanctuary. We won't punish these people. We won't look at whether they're illegal or not. We don't do any of that. Now you got the mayor in New York City saying, oh, for God's sake, make it stop. And I know Mayor Adams. I said to him, you should have never said you were a sanctuary city in the first place. Guess what? Words matter. And when you say it, they believe you, and they come. And right now in New York City, you just added 18,000 new students to New York City public schools in September. 18,000 at one time. Almost all of them immigrants who came here illegally and came to their sanctuary city in New York City. Right, I mean, there's a whole host of problems to that, including where do you put everybody? You know, so it is a huge problem that we have to fix the underlying system. So first, secure the border and try to interdict as much of these drugs as you can by using both the National Guard and Customs and Border Patrol. Customs and Border Patrol can't do it by themselves. You need to have National Guard, in my opinion, with them. Second, sit down and spend the political capital you need to spend to force a solution to the immigration problem. Because if we don't fix this system, we're going to continue to see what we're seeing now in fits and starts. Third thing is finish the wall. Right? Now, Donald Trump told us 4 years ago he was going to build a big, beautiful wall on the entire border of Mexico and the United States, and Mexico was going to pay for it. You all remember that, right? Over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Let me give you the results. In 4 years, he built 52 miles of new wall. 52 miles. If he continues at that pace and got reelected, he'd only need another 110 years as president to finish the wall. And we have not seen our first peso yet from Mexico. Not one. And we're not going to see one. It was a lie. He lies. And I'm telling you, because I know him, it's not that he's wrong. He lies. He knew he couldn't do it in 4 years when he said it, and he knew Mexico wasn't going to pay for it. But he thought he might be able to convince enough people if he said it enough times. And believe me, he has said this to me any number of times. He said to me, Chris, just remember this. Say something enough times and it becomes true. The election's stolen. Say it enough times, it becomes true. The Mexicans are going to pay for the wall. Say it enough times, it becomes true. Except now he's not just a candidate. He's been president, and we saw that he didn't build the wall. So we need to finish it. I don't know how long it's going to take to finish it. He only built 52 new miles. Got a long way to go, but we need to finish it too. That's another thing that will help to secure that border even more, make it more difficult for people to make their way over illegally. So those are the three things I would do. And remember this, it's easy to say, yeah, I'll build the wall in 4 years. I hope to, but you know, he was a builder. Remember, that was the other piece of this. I'm a builder. No one knows how to build like I do. I'm the greatest builder in the world. 52 miles in 4 years, 13 miles a year. See, I did that math in my head too really quick. I'm pretty good at this. Let me see. Let me go in the back. That's sir right there. No, not the sunglasses on the head, the guy in front of you. I'll get to you.
I was going to ask, what do you think is your potential path to victory if things go best case? Like, what's your path so everyone can believe in it and follow that?
Sure.
And the other question is, do you think Donald Trump has a good heart? Because he was talking about a civil war on Tucker, and he didn't resist that thought. He was almost encouraging it. So
No,
that's my question.
I'm tempted to answer the second part first, but I'll restrain myself and give you my path to victory first. Look, the path to victory starts here. And let me tell you something. Remember 2008. John McCain was dead in the water. He had fired his entire campaign staff. He had nobody left working for him except for 2 people who drove him around New Hampshire in a Suburban. Mitt Romney was the neighboring governor, personally wealthy, spending a ton of money. Rudy Giuliani, it's hard to remember back this far, but was America's mayor, who had enormous respect for people all over the country. John McCain was dead, and he won New Hampshire and never lost again. New Hampshire creates momentum. Momentum creates wins. South Carolina did it 4 years ago for Joe Biden. Joe Biden lost Iowa and lost New Hampshire. They all said Joe Biden was dead. Then he won South Carolina by a lot. He was winning states on Super Tuesday that he literally had never visited and had no campaign personnel working. That's American politics. When you show you can win, people want to be with the winner. And they're like, let's go. And I think there's a lot of people in our party who are saying they're for Trump right now because they're like, well, he's probably going to win. So I guess I should be with the guy who's going to win, and I don't want Biden, so I'm not thrilled about it, but I'm going to be for Trump. The minute you show the emperor has no clothes, I am willing to bet you there is going to be a mad rush for the exits from the red hat crowd, who are going to say, you know what? Thank you very much, but you don't look like you can win. We need to beat Biden, and we need someone who can, and I'm going to pick the guy who just beat you. So that's the path to victory. Do I think he has a good heart? I think he used to. When I first met him back in 2001, I think he had a good heart. I think that the years have taken whatever good heart he had and taken it away from him, and I don't think he's got it anymore. I think all he cares about now is himself. And I saw that happening when he was in the White House. In the beginning, when he first became president, he was scared to death. I remember Mary Pat and I went to see him, was it 25 days into his presidency. He invited the 2 of us to come down for lunch, and we had lunch in the Oval Office right off the Oval Office with him. And the first thing he said to me when I walked into the Oval Office was, he goes, Chris, can you believe I'm here? He was petrified. But as time went on, and in that job, people kiss your rear end a lot, I've heard. And I think it all became about him. And that's why I brought up I am your retribution. because it tells you what he's focused on now. He feels like he was wrong. And in some ways he was. Look, I said from the beginning, the whole Russia investigation was a pile of crap. I was in that campaign. That campaign couldn't have organized a 2-car funeral, everybody. I was there. They had nobody who knew what they were doing. They had a really charismatic candidate and a really awful opponent in Hillary Clinton. The idea that the Trump campaign could have put together a conspiracy with the Russian government to influence the election, Mary Pat and I would talk about it. It was laugh out loud. Are you kidding? They couldn't conspire with each other, let alone conspire with Vladimir Putin. And I think that affected him. That 2 years of pounding embittered him. And instead of rising above it, he decided, I'm going to be one of them. And he said it the other night. He said, if I become president and there's somebody who opposes me, I'm going to tell my attorney general to indict them. Like, is that really where we want to go, everybody? And if you think that that's what Joe Biden has done to him, if you believe that, and you're offended by it and opposed to it, as you should be, why the hell would you let him do it? He's telling you he's going to do it. He's lost his way. Power corrupted him and made him an angry, bitter man. And all you need to do is listen to him. Don't take my word for it. Just listen. Listen to his interview from Sunday. He's an angry, bitter man. And I would argue to you that we don't need an angry, bitter man as President of the United States. You know, my first vote was in 1980. I turned 18 in September. The election was in November. I sat in my dorm room at the University of Delaware. And it was not a happy time, as you all remember. Double-digit inflation, double-digit unemployment, double-digit interest rates. And you're a new college student going, wow, great world I'm going into. I won't ever be able to afford to buy a house. I won't ever be able to afford to buy a car. I won't be able to find a job. What am I doing? And I was taking on debt to go to college because my family didn't have the money to send me. So I had to borrow the money to do it. And I sat in my dorm room and got my absentee ballot, and I voted for the first time in my life, and I voted for Ronald Reagan. And the reason I voted for him was because he gave me hope. He made me believe, despite all the bad stuff that was happening around me, that he had a plan and the character to execute that plan to make the country a better place. And he did. I don't think we need people who are in it for themselves, seeking retribution. I think we need people who believe in America and its people. I do. And that's the other part of the path to victory, is I've won and I've lost. Winning is much better. Much, much better. But losing didn't make me stop coming up here 8 years later when I felt like my country, when I looked at this race, Mary Pat and I said, no one's going to take him on. No one is going to take him on. They're all going to cuddle up next to him. And if you need any further proof of this, just remember the debate from 3 weeks ago. The question we got asked is, would you support a convicted felon for President of the United States? And 6 of those people raised their hand. DeSantis late. He looked at what everybody else did. It was like the kid who used to copy off your paper in class, right? He's like, in the multiple choice answer, he's got B, he's got B, okay, B. So he looked one way, people raising their hand, another way, okay, I'll put my hand up, right? So I don't know if he's convicted on that answer, but he raised his hand. I refused to raise my hand and I got booed for it. Let me tell you, to be President of the United States, the only 2 things the Constitution requires is to be 35 years old and be a natural-born citizen of the United States. I'm sure if Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and George Washington thought that anybody would ever have the audacity as a convicted criminal to run for President of the United States, they would have also put in there and not been convicted of a federal crime. But they never thought anybody would have the gall to actually offer themselves for the presidency after being convicted of a federal crime. One of the few criticisms of the founders. but we can change that. And I am proud of the fact that I didn't raise my hand, and I will never raise my hand to say that someone who has been convicted by a jury of their peers in the fairest justice system that exists in the world, not perfect, but the fairest justice system that exists in the world, so should be president of the United States? No chance. And I suggest you should judge all those other people by that standard too. Right here. He's bringing you a microphone. Right behind you.
I just have to say, I want you to win so badly.
Me too.
But
I got no but. I just want me to win real bad.
I gotta tell you, after the last debate, when they started asking you questions about UFOs, you know, how are you gonna handle this? Trump is not going to be at the next debate. You
Nope.
heard that today. He's going to speak to the union workers,
In Detroit, yep.
yeah. So, I mean, and you're here in New Hampshire. My concern is, where else are you going to go? We need more people to know what your reasoning mind has to offer.
Well, thank you for that.
Well, you are. I watch George Stephanopoulos every Sunday, and you are the only one that has a reasonable mind.
Thank you.
But I'm worried.
All right, I'm worried too. But here's what we have to do. I've been to South Carolina, and I'll continue to go to South Carolina. Those are two of the first three states. Look, you've got to do well in the first few states, or you're going to be out of the race. It's just the way it is. The money will dry up. There won't be any momentum. Someone else will have the momentum. And I'm just being completely honest, that's what you have to do. So you don't see anybody really in a lot of other states other than Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, because that's where the game is. Now, you'll go to other states to raise money, which you have to do. So this week I'll be in Colorado and I'll be in Arizona on my way to California for the debate next Wednesday. But you're going to see me here in South Carolina. Those are the places I'm going to be. Because if I don't do well in these places, I'm not going to win. So you got to focus on, there's only so many hours in the day, and you got to focus on where you can do it. And I would also say to you that I believe that making your case here also resonates nationally. Because you see me on TV all the time, whether it's on Fox or CNN or some of the networks, CBS and ABC. You continue to make your case nationally over media mostly. Podcasts, like this is a whole new thing since 8 years ago. There were really not a lot of podcasts 8 years ago. Now, I did a podcast the other day called the All In Podcast. It was 2 hours. And I can tell you, 25 million people listened. 25 million. So the whole media landscape is different. So where I will spend my personal time is here in South Carolina. But when you do a podcast like that and 25 million people listen, they're from everywhere across this country who are listening. And so every time we get a new cycle, there's new ways to communicate. We're adjusting to that. And I think having some success at it. And for all of you, it's like, you got to believe to make it happen. And if you believe, then we got to go out and make it happen. You got to talk to your friends and your neighbors and get more people to come to things like this so they can see for themselves if they're not convinced, and tell them, these national polls are crazy. We don't have a national primary. If we had a national primary, I'd be worried. But we don't. And the last poll that mattered up here was at 14% in New Hampshire, and it's second place. As Wayne said off the top, the last Rasmussen national poll, I was tied for second nationally with DeSantis. But, in the end, the whole race will change in Iowa. Some people will do well, some people will do less well and drop out. Then New Hampshire, some people will do well, others less well, and they'll drop out. So what you want to be, for me, in New Hampshire is first or second. If you're first or second in New Hampshire, you get yourself a ticket to South Carolina. And then you want to do well there. And then it's probably going to be down to just 2 or 3 candidates by that point. And then it's a ball game. And then you start running all over the country like crazy. But right now, here, Iowa, South Carolina are the 3 most important places in the country. And this is where you got to spend your personal time. But I'll be doing a lot of other stuff on TV, and we'll continue to do that this Sunday. I'll be on Fox News Sunday, on Sunday this week. And we've got a couple other TV appearances between now and the end of the week. I was on Fox today with Neil Cavuto at 4 o'clock before I came here. Yesterday I was on CNN with Caitlin Collins. So, you know, you continue to go to those places and you reach a lot of people that way too. So I live every day in fear, right? About what more could I be doing? What more should I be doing? But what I also know is when I put my head on the pillow at night, I'm usually pretty tired, and it means that I've done a lot. So just keep doing what you can do, and you do what you can do. If you believe that I'm the right person to be president of the United States, then you got to go out and talk to your friends and your neighbors too, because in this state, that can make a difference. And we don't want to wake up on primary morning and think we could have done more. And you're right, I worked hard here 8 years ago, and it didn't work out. But Trump was a phenomenon 8 years ago, like nothing we've ever seen before. He's not that anymore. And I think you people are going to help me take him down in January, and that'll be a lot of fun to watch.
Thank you, Governor, for being here.
Thank you.
I want to follow up on a question that a couple of people have already asked, but should you get the opportunity, and I sure hope you do, you talked about reaching over the aisle to the other party and reaching out. I'd like to know how you're going to reach within your own aisle to the people in this party that don't agree with anything you're telling us. They don't agree with what you're saying. You're going to have to contend with that and reaching out in the other aisle.
Sure.
How do you deal with that?
Same way. I mean, look, this is a people business, and 2 things will happen inside your own party, okay? Some of them you're going to have to work extraordinarily hard, court them, spend time with them, listen to them, give them some things that they want to make sure that they do what they need to do. And by that I mean not like...
Didn't work for McCarthy.
Well, it hasn't worked yet, but he wasn't the president of the United States. You know, the Oval Office is the greatest home field advantage in the world. Believe me, I've been in there a lot of times. And when you walk in there, you get a little vertigo every time. You look around, you're like, oh my God, right? And the president of the United States is sitting behind that desk. And when he looks at you and says, I need you to do this for me, it's different than Kevin McCarthy, with all due respect to Kevin. Right? And secondly, a lot of these folks who say, I don't agree with you, I'll never be with you, the minute you show you can win, they're like, I was always with you. I've been in politics a long time, and I've seen it, where like people who are never with you, then all of a sudden they go like, you know, quietly, I was working for you. I mean, I had to say I was for Trump because, you know, but you ask people behind the scenes, I was totally with you. Popularity follows power often, okay? And that's part of what will happen in your own party too. They say, okay, maybe he wasn't my choice, but he's better than Biden, and so I'm gonna be with him. And I won't agree with him on everything, but he's better than the alternative. So there's a lot of different ways that it will happen, but the most important way is you as president have to make every one of those people be important to your success.
You have to admit there's some Republicans in Congress right now, they're a little
Sure, and I may not get all of them. I don't need all of them.
different. A little different.
Yeah, I don't need all of them. I need 218 of them,
There you go.
right?
Yeah.
I need 51 of them in the Senate.
Yeah.
And let's start there.
Okay.
And look, and some of them will never be with me. That's okay. There were some Republicans in New Jersey who weren't with me, and lots of Democrats who weren't. But you go and you figure out the ones who are willing to be persuaded, and then you work on them hard. And, you know, I can be incredibly charming
We all know that now.
when I need to, you know? And you got to use that. You got to use every tool that you're given. I used to call, like one of the things I used to do, which in the beginning I thought was just a gimmick that I came up with, but then I realized how important it was. I called every legislator. We had 120 legislators, not nearly as many as you guys have, Wayne, thankfully, when you hear this story. We had 120 legislators in New Jersey, 40 senators, 80 reps. I called every one of them on their birthday every year. Every one of them every year. It's to the point where by the time we got to year 4 and year 5, if I didn't call them first, because usually I'd make the calls first thing in the morning while I'm in the car on the way to the State House. If for some reason I was caught up with business and I didn't make the call till 12 or 1 or 2 or 5, they'd be like, we thought you forgot us, you know? Governor, I thought you forgot my birthday. There was one legislator, a female Democrat, the same birthday as Mary Pat. And she said to me, one year, will you just say happy birthday to me before you say it to Mary Pat? And I'm like, impossible, I sleep with her. And I don't know what you're suggesting, but she's gonna go first. But I gotta tell you that little things like that really mattered. And then if they were, right, if they were in the State House that day on their birthday, I'd invite them into the governor's office. We'd sit down and have a conversation. You know, those are the things that develop relationships. And then relationships can lead to you getting a yes when you might have otherwise gotten a no. Not every time. You're not going to succeed every time. And if you hold yourself to that standard, then you won't ever do it, because then you're like, well, it didn't work with one person, so now to hell with it, I'm not doing it. My view on this is the way you have to govern. And I was talking to a group of people the other day who had worked for another Republican governor. I will restrain myself from saying which one it was, but not anybody who's in the race currently. And they were talking to me about how they used to try to counsel him to do stuff like that. And he was incredibly resistant to it. And he'd be like, why the hell do I have to have that person in my office? And he wouldn't do it. And then when he needed votes, that was the first time he was ever calling them. It's harder. But when you have their number in your phone and you've called them on their birthday and you've talked to them about issues that they care about, when the phone rings, they're not thinking like, what does he want now? They're like, oh, I wonder what he wants. It's a whole different attitude and approach to it. And the way to see how it works in the opposite is the reason we still have Obamacare is because Donald Trump didn't do that. In fact, he did the opposite. All he did was dump on John McCain constantly. John McCain's not a real war hero. John McCain's not a good senator. John McCain's a rhino. He used to just beat on McCain constantly. And what happened? When Obamacare was right there and there was only one vote left, whose vote was it? Came back from brain surgery. Traveled from Arizona to Washington to be there. And I remember Mary Pat and I were watching together that night, and she goes, well, it's going to get repealed because McCain ran against Obama. He said he was against Obamacare. I said, I know John McCain. No chance. No chance. He is not going to give Trump a victory on this because Trump has belittled him at every turn. And you'll all remember he came out in the Senate floor and went. And that's why we still have Obamacare. You never know when that moment's going to come. And you don't know who's going to be the deciding vote. But that's why you have to treat everybody well. As painful as it is sometimes, and it is painful sometimes, you got to treat everybody well. Because guess what? I used to say in New Jersey all the time, the 3 most important numbers were 41, 21, and 1. 41 to pass a bill in the lower house, 21 to pass a bill in the Senate, and 1 to get the bill signed into law. You got to remember, you're 1. Man, if you're 1, you'd be really nice to 21 and 41. What's it cost you? It costs you nothing except your time. And that's what you got to be willing to do. Joe Biden's not up to doing that anymore, and Donald Trump was never interested in it. So if you want the garbage you've got down there now, send one of those 2 guys back. But if you want somebody who's going to work every day and every night to develop those relationships and make something happen, then you're looking at the guy who's done it and will be even more motivated to do it the next time. All right. So it's 8:25. My staff says I can take one more question, which means I will take two. Because I want to show I'm still in charge. Yes, ma'am, right there. Let him get you a microphone so everybody can hear you, right behind you.
I came in later, so I apologize
No
for
problem.
that. So I'm not sure if you talked about healthcare.
Nope.
So I know in America we have like we're sick care. We're not healthcare. We have one of the worst healthcare systems in any of the countries anywhere, pretty much. What is your thoughts on healthcare now, how it is, prevention, how we should be getting prevention out there? I mean, most Americans were learning about nutrition from pharmaceutical companies on advertisements. So, and this is the field I'm in and very passionate about it.
Yep.
So where are you on that?
Well, look, I think what you're talking about is generally called wellness care rather than sick care, right?
Correct.
And look, we have to reevaluate the entire way we provide healthcare in this country, because the way we do it makes it much more expensive. Because if you don't confront your health until you're sick, then the entire healthcare system is playing catch up to try to save you. So you're already on the edge of the cliff, and they bring the whole army at you, and that's what we're great at in America. We're really good when you're sick at bringing the whole army at you to try to save you and pull you off the cliff. But it becomes enormously expensive to do that. And so we've had a backwards approach to this, and I agree with you. We don't invest anything or very little on the front end, and we are willing to invest anything on the back end. Now, the good part of the back end is that shows the kind of heart that Americans have. Americans really do believe that every life is precious, and that saving someone's life, improving their quality of life, is worth whatever you need to spend to do it. Because Americans, unlike people in a lot of other countries, really personalize this. So I don't want to lose that spirit, but how about we get fewer and fewer people to that edge? And the way to do that is to increase the number of both physicians and nurses that we have in this country who are providing the regular type of general practitioner care that helps you have a wellness program. What we're encouraging in our country, and have been for decades now, is specialization, right? So most doctors, we make it financially and from a prestige perspective better to be an oncologist, a cardiologist, a neurologist, any of the specialties. We encourage that more, and we reward it more financially. And so we get fewer and fewer people, both in nursing care and in physician care, that want to do the front end stuff because they're not recognized as doing great things kind of from a spiritual perspective, and they're not being compensated anywhere near the same way, for the most part, than others are. So we need to reverse that system. And what we need to do is to start to invest in giving incentives to nurses and physicians, first to get more of them, because we have a horrible nursing shortage in this country, less of a physician shortage, a bit of one, but where we really have a horrible shortage is nursing. And you saw this during COVID, right? The people who were nurses and were willing to go to work during COVID were getting paid exorbitant amounts of money, crazy money. The hospitals bidding against each other to get them. I remember dealing with hospitals in New Jersey during COVID, because I was working for a number of them, were talking to me about the fact that a nurse would commit to like 2 weeks at a time at their hospital. Pay me X for 2 weeks, and then I'll see what my offers are 2 weeks from now. Great capitalist system for them, but it wouldn't be possible to do that if, in fact, we had the number of nurses we needed. So I think we need to incentivize, I'd say, with scholarship money and grant money, to say, we'll pay for more of your medical education, whether it be physician or nursing, if you commit to spend 10 years in a general practice. And if you do that, and then if they want to move to something else later, that's fine. You'll have more of a pipeline building up behind them. But we need to incentivize it, because otherwise people are not going to do it. You know, and there's some good-hearted people who do it now for less money and less attention. But if you really want to move the numbers, in that direction, you're going to do it. The other thing that'll continue, I think, to make America a healthier country is our pharmaceutical industry in this respect. Their innovation in what they're doing it outstrips any place else in the world. And so you're seeing now that really we should be close to eliminating heart disease, given some of the medications that people can now take, both on the cholesterol side of things and the blood pressure side of things. That if you take those medications and you do it the way your doctor tells you to do it, you can avoid much of that was absolutely killer before. We've seen that over and over. So what I'd like to see in our pharmaceutical industry is to get prices more under control so people can afford to buy their prescription drugs. For instance, most pharmaceutical companies, when they have a new popular drug, are giving anywhere from 50 to 70% rebates. You never see them. You know why? Because you have pharmacy benefit managers in between, the middlemen, who manage the benefits, who take most of the rebate. So the pharmaceutical company's doing that. They think they're doing a good thing. We got to get rid of these middlemen. It makes no sense. And you never hear anybody talk about it. And you want to know why? Because all the big companies buy the middlemen then. So like most of these middlemen are now owned by health insurance companies. So they're getting your premium and then they're getting the pharmacy rebate at the same time. No wonder they make tens of billions of dollars. The other thing the pharmaceutical companies need to do to make costs more reasonable and to make us believe in them more, and you alluded to this in your question, can you please stop the commercials? Like seriously, right? Is there anybody in here who likes the pharmaceutical commercials? No. Right? Nobody does. This is the worst bit of advertising I've ever seen in my life. Like I talk to people all the time about this and they're all like, yeah, we hate them. We hate the ads. And they're spending billions of dollars on it. Stop. I want my doctor to tell me what medicine I'm supposed to take. Not like 4 actors in a commercial saying if I take Eliquis, my life will be perfect. I don't know if I need it. How am I supposed to make that decision? I mean, they make themselves more unpopular. Look, they just saved the world. Okay, what they did during COVID saved the world. And they're still incredibly unpopular. And so I say to these farm executives all the time, don't you get it? Like even when you save the world, you guys can't get anybody to take you out to dinner. That should be a sign, you know? They develop a vaccine in record time that lowers the death rate. And people still are like, hate the pharma companies. Huh? I think a large part of it is the advertising that they do, which makes people believe, rightfully so, that they've got money to burn. And if they've got money to burn, that means they're charging me too much. And that's not right. So I think we have to work on all of those things. But I think to get at the wellness piece, you need more people talking about it. And to have physicians you can go to, not just when you get sick, but that you're encouraged to go on a regular basis so that you can get ahead of these things. And getting ahead of them is much better than trying to catch up with them. Less expensive, less traumatic, and more successful. And we need to change our mindset on that. And the way to do that is to get the people we rely on, which are our doctors and nurses, are the people we rely on to give us this advice. Most of us are not educated in this stuff.
Health coaches are good for that.
Pardon me?
Health coaches.
Yeah, I mean, look, and we've done that in New Jersey, both in terms of wellness, and we also did it in terms of addiction, where we have addiction coaches. We paid for them to be in every emergency room. So when somebody overdoses, the first person they see when we reverse them is an addiction coach who is in recovery and can look at them and say, I was where you were, on a gurney, in a hospital, had my life saved. Let me tell you how you can go and get treatment so that you can be standing where I am and not laying where you are. Those are the kind of things we need to do to turn our health system around. We did 2 of them in New Jersey, and they were incredibly successful. We saw a 25% reduction in overdoses because of the addiction coaches. And because it makes a difference. You hear it from someone who's never had the problem, it's less credible. You hear it from someone who's been there, you have a better chance of bringing that person around. So thanks for bringing that up. It's really good. All right, sir, I'll go to you as our last question. Yes, sir.
Hurry, I'm on the clock. Okay. Thank you, Governor.
You're welcome.
First thing that you said, I think is true about New Hampshire and us. So next time you're driving through Dover Point, Kim and I will welcome you into our house. You can come in, you can go in and out 3 times.
And
check
we're
the
done.
box,
Good,
and
excellent.
We're done. Yeah, go
Thank
out,
you.
play with the dogs, come back in.
Perfect.
My question is this. This is my second time, our second time at a town hall, learning a lot about you. Also listening to a lot of your Republican colleagues, but now competitors.
Yep.
The theme that I'm turning to, apart from policy, is a house divided cannot stand. And I think if we were to anchor to anything, that's the core theme. So that's kind of an aha moment for me so far in this campaign, very early on. Have you had an aha moment as you've been traveling around the country and listening to us? Is there something that you've learned from us? Because we've learned a lot about you. Is there anything that you have now learned about us that's something you didn't expect?
Yeah. People are more desperate than I thought they were. People are more despondent than I thought they were. I knew there was division in the country. We all can see that. But people are more desperate about changing it than I thought they were. And I don't think that gets covered a lot. I think what the media typically likes to cover is the 2 extremes and the fight between the 2 extremes. And the people in the middle, which is the majority of this country, who are desperate to have it change and know that we're in trouble, but feel helpless to change it. And that feeling, to me, this time, much more than 8 years ago, is palpable. 8 years ago, what I felt was that people were unhappy with the way Barack Obama had conducted himself. They saw him as too laid back, too professorial, too much of a too cool for school kind of attitude, and they wanted a president who was going to go in there and kind of battle for them. And I felt that very clearly, and I think it was one of the things that helped propel Donald Trump as quickly as he did, because I thought I was coming to the race as the tough guy from the Northeast, and it turns out, I was just a little bit too sane, as it turned out. This time it's different. This time people have now had 4 years of Donald Trump and nearly 3 years of Joe Biden, and they're like, oh God, can't we do better? And that, to me, has been much more palpable than it was 8 years ago. 8 years ago, they were tired of Obama, but they looked at Hillary and thought, she's not going to be any better. So let's give this guy a try. I can't tell you how many people back when I was campaigning for him in 2016, and I'd say to them, so you're for Donald, why? They go, well, why not? How bad could it be? Let's give him a try. It wasn't like there were some who were convicted about him, but the most people I saw were people like, let's give it a whirl. People now seem much more desperate to me. Like, we got to get this one right. And I think that that's what I've noticed the most. Now, I don't know how that manifests itself. That's the end of the book, right? We don't know that yet. And unlike a book, we can't skip ahead and cheat. We got to live it and experience it. But I do feel that from people, even people who are for Trump or Biden. I had a woman come up to me in a restaurant in Manchester when I was here last week. And she probably looked to me to be in her 80s. And she came up to the side of my table. I was eating lunch with 3 other of my staff. And she said, can I tell you something? And I said, sure. And she leaned over to whisper in my ear. And she said, I don't like Trump, but I don't know what to do. So I pulled back and I said, why are you whispering? I think there's a lot of that, where people are like, I don't like it, but I don't want to say it out loud because I'm not sure how I'm going to be accepted, because we've become such a group of folks who don't tolerate dissent from our opinion. We only watch the news shows we want to watch. We only listen and go to parties where people agree with us. If people disagree, they don't just disagree and then say, pass the salt at a dinner party. They get up and leave. And so people are scared of that atmosphere. And so I think it's led to the kind of the desperation that I'm talking about. And the whispering. We need to stop whispering. And this lead up to this election is the time to stop whispering. And if you had asked me a year ago if I was going to get in this race, I would have told you no. We had run for president. It's hard. And we had done it and felt like other people should get a chance. But as I watched everybody whispering, even the candidates, they don't want, like, they'll tell you. I'm sure some of you have had this experience if you've gotten up close with a candidate and spoken to him or her. And you go, well, what do you think about Trump? Like, yeah, he's not good. Not good. Not good, but shh, the C-SPAN camera is here. I can't say it out loud, right? I mean, we got to stop that. It's time to do it. And it's time to make a choice. And I'll live with whatever choice people make. I did 8 years ago, and I'll do it now. I hope it's me, but if it's not like I'm moving to Canada. I'm an American. I love this country, and I'll continue to try to do things that help it, but I intend to win. When we made the decision to get into this thing, it wasn't to make a point. I'm done with that. I'm here to win. And you want to win, then we need to do it together. So I've kept you here for 2 hours, so I'm just going to end quickly with this. You need to know who you're voting for. You need to know who the person is and what they really believe. We've had carnival barkers talking to us for too long. And it's not just Donald. Biden was a carnival barker too 3 years ago. But he didn't look like one because he was against the greatest carnival barker in American political history. But he was too. Take the time to figure out who we are. And don't worry about voting for who you think is going to win. Vote for the person who you think you want to be your president, who you'll be proud to have as your president. I'm tired of going to other countries and making excuses for who our president is. I'm tired of having to say, well, you have to understand the circumstances at the time. Or, you don't really know everything that went on in the choice. No, we need to have a president again that we're proud of. Have we had a president recently who we can point our children and our grandchildren to as a role model? As somebody that they can believe in, as someone that you'd want them to emulate? That matters more than any position on an issue, everybody. Because let me tell you this. I don't know who you were for in the 2000 election, whether you're for Al Gore or whether you're for George W. Bush. But I'll tell you one thing they never, ever discussed in that race, that never got asked in a town hall meeting or on a debate stage. No one ever asked them, what will you do if Osama bin Laden hatches a plan to fly 4 airplanes full of jet fuel into both towers of the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and aiming for the Capitol, but gets crashed in Pennsylvania? What will you do? No one could have even fathomed that. But George W. Bush was the guy sitting behind that desk. And for me, I'm glad he was. Because whether you agree or disagree with him, he was a man of character. And during those moments, he made us proud that he was our president. We didn't agree with every decision, but he never embarrassed us. And he stood up for what the country believed in. My point is, you never know what's going to come across a president's desk. You can check all the boxes on the issue matrix you make up on your legal pad at home. Don't leave out the one for character. Who do you believe will tell you the truth? Who do you believe will stand up for you? Who do you believe will do the right thing, whether it's in their interest or not? We better make that choice this time. No more compromising on character. It's time to make sure that the person we vote for has the character that stands in front of that flag and blends in with it, because he or she represents what this country aspires to be. I want to be president because I want to serve, not be served. I want to be president because I believe that this country is the greatest place in the world, and it could be even greater. And the next president gets to be our president on the 250th birthday of this country. The greatest experiment that's ever succeeded in the history of self-governance. Let's have someone we can be proud of to do it. I want to be that person. I hope I get your support.